In this video, HomePod Mini set to launch in more countries, Beats Pill discontinued, how long does YouTube have left, iMac Pro or just big iMac, chip shortages and the Apple transition, Apple banking, and Quad M2 Max. See how bad that naming really is. I'm iCave Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours every weekday, like the video, subscribe to the channel and ring my bell. So first topic, HomePod Mini is set to launch in 7 new countries this year, though how soon is unclear, but it could be something that gets announced at Apple's spring event. Right now, HomePod Mini is only available in the US, Australia, Austria, Canada, China, France, Germany, Hong Kong, India, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, Spain, Taiwan, and the United Kingdom. That is, of course, an alphabetical list with the United States exactly where they see themselves first in line. If only I'd called it America instead of the United States, but then that's technically different. Anyway, the new countries to join will be Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Russia, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Swedish, Danish and Norwegian language support for Siri are currently in testing. Exciting times for people to be misheard in new and interesting languages. Also, Apple has discontinued the Beats Pill, which is the battery-powered Bluetooth speaker. Moving on. No, really, Apple hasn't replaced it with anything new, but how would you feel about a HomePod with an internal battery that you could move around the house? A GoPod, if you will. This could actually be a pretty cool move, have a small charging cradle that it sits in the majority of the time, then just pick it up and take it with you when you're working in the garage, or fancy listening to some music in your bubble bath, or want to check your calendar while brushing your teeth over Siri. I can see that being an option, but does it do more than just taking your phone with you, other than having a better sound quality? Answers in the comments. And speaking of the comments, it's time for your questions in iCave Answers. And if you want to get a question answered in this section of the videos each day, all you need to do, use hashtag iCave Answers down in the comments section with your question. That way I know that you want me to talk about it on the show and not just give you a little quick answer in the comments themselves. But I do read and answer all of them. Anyway, Team Kinetics asks iCave Answers, do you think we'll soon see the day that Google pulls the plug on YouTube as short-form videos start to take over from long-form videos and people's attention spans reduce further? What's the next for media consumption? As a YouTuber, do you think there's more of a future for Instagram and TikTok than YouTube? It's a good question, but YouTube exploded last year. The amount of people like myself that were just sitting around kind of waiting to be able to go back to work just meant that a huge number of new creators came. Some have fallen by the wayside, some are still thriving, some are still making daily Apple videos, even though there's nothing to really talk about, and that's why I'm so glad that we started doing iCave Answers, so I've got things to talk about every day. However, there's definitely a place for short-form video, but there's also a massive demand for longer form video as well. There's one of my favourite YouTubers is a guy called Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut. He talks really in massive depth, more depth than anyone really needs, about rocket engines. He's just done a I think 2-hour video on Russian rocket engines and the history and how the families fit together and stuff, and that's fascinating. This is probably better content that you get from most documentary makers on TV, so there's a massive demand for it. He's got millions of views on it as well. It's it makes so much sense. And things like what Rene Ritchie does with Curiosity Stream and Nebula and places like that I don't get invited to. There's a massive demand for these longer form, more in-depth bits of content. But obviously, yes, short form is very popular. I don't think YouTube's going anywhere anytime soon. They've tried to do the shorts play. Nobody really has got into it. Certainly from my age group, I'm sure there are lots of younger people that also use TikTok that do watch a lot of them, but there's also difficulties with how they monetize that in terms of the way that YouTube already works. Not that anyone cared on TikTok. The way that it's probably going to work is direct, brand integrations and stuff, just like we've done in the past on this YouTube channel, where a sponsor will get in touch, they'll make a video that's about that, and leverage the audience they have. But I don't think YouTube's going anywhere. I don't think we need to worry about that for now, but I will also be trying to kind of expand to other platforms as well, just to, hedge the bets, never hurts. James Apple asks, do you still have reservations about the bigger iMac having the M1 Pro/M1 Max being the iMac Pro? You're getting ProMotion, Mini LED, and a higher resolution than 4K display. I really don't know. I feel like there's no need for it to be called an iMac Pro, because iMac and the I at the beginning and Pro aren't really compatible, but It looks like Apple doesn't really care about that anymore. It might well be called that, but I do kind of still think there's going to be an even bigger one that's maybe around that 32 inches. We know that Ross Displayman has talked about a 27-inch display. He's also talked about there being a 32-inch display. He looks at the displays. He doesn't necessarily look at what products they're going to go into 100%. So it could well be that there just ends up being 3 different sizes, and maybe we have an iMac that's at 24 and 27 inches, and then an iMac Pro that's at 27 and 32 inches. Just don't know. Because then your iMac would be like your desktop Air, and your iMac Pro would be your desktop MacBook Pro. Maybe that makes sense. And James Apple asks, if the pandemic didn't affect the chip shortage in them producing M1 Mac machines, do you think the transition from moving from Intel to M1 would be smoother than PowerPC to the Intel transition, and would they break the record for the PowerPC to Intel transition for the Mac? I don't think there was really any delays in terms of chip shortage in terms of these Macs coming out. I know that's kind of the narrative that everyone's talked about, but the M series chips haven't had any delays. The thing that's slowed things down at the moment seems to have been issues with mini LED displays. If you look at what happened with the original iPad Pro when that came out with the mini LED displays, it had all of those blooming issues that everyone complained about. You don't really see it as much in real life as you do on camera, because obviously the HDR in cameras just really pulls it out because it's trying to grab all that detail. I think they kind of retooled it and changed the way that they filter the light that comes through and things like that. I don't think they've had any issues with silicon shortages for Apple at this point. They've not had enough to make as many as they wanted, but I don't think they've delayed products because of it. What I do think, though, is they would never want to do that transition in the 8 months that they did, as they did with the original PowerPC to Intel transition. And the reason for that is that they needed to make sure that software makers had got time. The original Rosetta was nowhere near as good as Rosetta 2, which we've had for this version. This has been a very smooth transition in terms of compatibility compared to that. And I think having that extra time has helped. I think Tim Cook is a lot more kind of planned out with things. If he says 2 years, I think it's basically going to be 2 years. With Steve's stuff before, I think they gave themselves the leeway and then were able to beat it and just pumped stuff out as quick as they could, because they were using a lot less of these components. It's a lot easier to grab a few 100,000 of something than several million of something. Greg West asks, I gave answers. I think it was Mark Gurman who this week floated the idea that Apple's next big things would be financial services. In the US, we have the Apple Card, which, while being managed by a bank and not Apple, has wonderful integration with iOS, great convenience for record keeping, and has great service. What do you think of Apple Bank? If Apple offered personal savings and checking accounts along with credit card services, would that sway you to join? Do you think Apple's way of doing things could appeal financially? Quicken went from record keeping to services. Is it time for Apple to jump in? Honestly, I don't know on this one. I have no frame of reference because, as you say, the Apple Card only exists in the US. It's not really an Apple product. It's a product from the bank that then Apple puts a nice front end on and brands it with them. So it's not really a comparable thing. I think banking is so different in different countries. Over here, like, the vast majority of bank accounts don't have any fees. You can have the fee-based accounts a little bit higher up if you want all the extra features and stuff. But over here, we tend to just buy the features separately. So Apple could do something like that. But I think what would be more likely is for Apple to offer a front end, something like the finance apps that you can get, where it kind of brings all of your stuff together. Things like, I think it was Mint was one of the ones, where it brings in all of your credit cards, it brings in all of your loans, it shows you everything in a nice graphical way, like the Apple Card does. That might be a decent idea for Apple. I don't think running their own bank is even something that they're that interested in, and with everything that's going on with crypto and all of the other stuff, I think it's a terrible time to get into traditional banking, if I'm honest. Carl Lake asks, I gave answers. Do you think that the Mac Pro might get M2 Max Quad and skip the M1 Max Quad? Also, could the MX Max Dual and Max Standard effectively be binned into MX Max Quads? Now, if Apple is going to bring them out at WWDC, which seems to be the idea, it's going to be M1 based. It's going to be M1 Max with multiple SoCs. It doesn't matter. The M2 stuff at that level I don't think is going to be ready for WWDC. If they bring out M2 in spring, as I'm hoping, and as John Prosser and Sam Cole on Genius Bar were talking about this week. They seem to think that this MacBook Air is coming in the spring as well, which is great because I thought I was on my own. I think Guoming Chi is still saying probably for the autumn, but there seems to be conflicting thoughts on that. I still think spring is most likely. If it is out in the spring, then I guess they could have those ready for WWDC, especially if they're going to showcase it and then launch it later in the year, along with presumably MacBook Pros with M2 Max and M2 Pro chips in there as well. That could make sense, but I still think we're going to see the M1 generation in a Pro machine first, or maybe there'll be a lower priced one with M1 Pro and then a higher priced one with M2 Pro and M2 Max. Also possible. But that's it for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all the Patreons over there. Don't forget, if you want to get some cool threads, iCaveDave.com/merch, you can get the Cupertino collection. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.